So this is our first panel discussion of the day. We're focusing in this instance on retention, what makes people stay and what brings them home, as retention and return migration are obviously important and crucial, in fact, for resilience. We are going to look at maybe what convinces people to return after they've left and why they leave, highlighting the practical policies that might help regions maintain a stable, thriving population. So, staying with us for this panel, we have Hanne Roed, who we met earlier, staying on, and Professor Leah van Wissen, also coming to comment on that as well. But joining us, we have Jordi Solé, who is head of the Brussels office of the Catalan Association of Municipalities, and also Pawel, Chmielinski, who is president of the European Rural Development Network from Poland. Hanne, let me start with you. What are the key factors that you see influencing individuals to stay in the region? Give us an overarching view to set the scene.
Well, I've actually discussed that with my colleagues at home in the region for the last 12 years. And I participated in very many kinds of aspects to try to see can we do something about it. For about 5 years ago, it was the hottest topic in Denmark that if we just got education on the countryside and rural areas, then everything would be the perfect solution. So we tried, but I have to say, it's not a lack of study, possibilities to study or to get education on the countryside. There's a lack of students who want to go there. And that's perhaps one of the key issues to understand what is happening on the countryside. It's not when you're shutting, as some people are now out on the countries, rural areas say, but you'll close everything and then we have to leave, or people leave. Some says to me, then they leave because you have shut down for the jobs. And I just have to say, it's also jobs in public, as some hospitals or things like that. I would say, no, it's not that way around. It's because people have left that you have to close the hospital. There's no use for it as there once was. And that's the same thing who's actually the key, is the young people who are going. It's not the people in the 30s or 40s, 50s going for another job. Normally they have a job. That's what really is the problem in rural areas that the young people are leaving. And they are leaving, of course they leave for education, but that's not the whole explanation. Many of them says, I go because I want to go. I want to see something else. So we have moved on to say, how do we get them back? And that feels perhaps a little misguided to say, but you have got an education that now is so specialized you have to be in a larger city, but most people don't. Most people get an education that they also could live on a rural area on the countryside with. And we have focused on to see what gets them back. And what getting people back is normally that they say, here you can afford a house that is much larger and much better than the one you could get in the town. Here's a job. In the town, I could be the fourth employee in some bureau somewhere, but here I could be the boss from the day I moved back. And for most, perhaps, there are grandparents nearby if you have got children. Often see that it's the small, when people get children, then they go into thoughts about moving home, where the grandparents are. It's very, very important. Grandparents who are able to support the family, it's very important. So we're now going to look at how do we support that. And one thought more. That's very, very, very important for parents, also not in the rural area. What schools could my child attend when that comes? And that's perhaps a problem we had to overlook, because the educations who are in rural area and countryside are not always at that quality that they are in the town. At least I speak about Denmark now. I'm not claiming that so in other countryside, but you have to be aware that the good schools or the bad schools could hold the young people from moving back to where they came from. We'll have to support good schools. And that was in the first line, the things I would say about it.
Thank you, Hanne. I'm sure we'll expand on some of those. Jordi, let me turn to you with this sort of same question, which is sort of the overarching one for the panel, which is what are those key factors that influence people in moving away or staying in their regions, particularly in rural areas? And feel free to educate us on the situation in Catalonia.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me in this discussion. Congratulations for the dashboard. I have to say that I didn't know about this tool, but I find it very interesting, and I will let our associates know about this very practical and very interesting tool. I'm here representing the Catalan Association of Municipalities. We represent 947 local governments in a territory slightly bigger than Belgium. That means, as you can imagine, that we have a lot of small or very small municipalities. Out of these 947, we have 336 with less than 500 inhabitants. That's a huge challenge in terms of local governance and in terms of giving opportunities for people living in these places to stay and to make a living in the places where they would like to stay. That also means that for our mayors, especially for the mayors of these small towns, the reality of the rural world is not only a theoretical debate. It's the day-to-day work that they have to and realities that they have to face. Catalonia is in global as such. It's not I would say probably you wouldn't have Catalonia in mind when you speak about rural territories in Europe. We are a demographically dynamic country. We've been growing quite a lot. In the last years, we are now 8 million inhabitants. Last year, we grew about 100,000 inhabitants, mainly because of international migration. But we do have a very diverse territory. We have mountainous areas. We have in some inland places very small communities where there are some specific problems of the population, and that's why in Catalonia we have developed some frameworks, some tools to try to develop the policies, the right policies that should make people stay or at least have the opportunity to stay in the places where they were born or where they choose to stay. One of them is the rural agenda for Catalonia. That was, I would say, a very thorough discussion and a very deep exercise involving a lot of stakeholders, the Catalan government, also municipalities, socioeconomic actors. There were different working groups. There were over 40 workshops all across the territory. And in this collective exercise, we came up with 900 concrete proposals on how to develop those tools, those policies that could help these rural communities to develop and to offer more opportunities to their people. And coming from this exercise, building up this rural agenda, we have recently a new legal framework, a law, that was passed in the Catalan Parliament last July, if I'm not mistaken, which is the law on the status for rural municipalities. According to the law, rural municipalities in Catalonia are those that are below 2,000 inhabitants. That means that over half of the total number of municipalities belong to this classification. And this law foresees some specific tools and a specific treatment of rural municipalities in terms of prioritizing them when it comes to funding, when it comes to investments, and trying to develop together the specific policies to retain or to attract people. Maybe just to conclude, to go back to your question, what makes people stay? For us, it's clear, and speaking with many mayors, I would say they would share this answer. It's jobs, it's public services, and it's housing. These are the main three criteria. There will be probably a fourth one, which is mobility, infrastructure, and connectivity. But if I will have to prioritize the first three, I would say jobs, housing, and public services.
Thank you, Jordi. And I know with that rural agenda, there's also governance and monitoring mechanisms to follow up and look at implementation. So if we've time, we'll come back and ask you a bit about that if people are interested. For now, Leo, let me hand the floor over to you. The same opening question. It set the scene for us and give us your initial thoughts. If you could have the microphone.
Yeah, thanks, Jennifer. Oh, yeah, right. Well, the flow of young people from the countryside to the city is something that we have seen for centuries and in all societies. It's called urbanization. It's one of the fundamental demographic developments, and it's not very wise to have policies trying to sort of mitigate that. I mean, I'm fully in agreement with Hanne about that. So that is a given. In the past, we didn't notice so much, or we didn't think it was too bad, because we had also in rural areas positive natural change, more birth than death. So we didn't see that so much. But now we have a combination of aging, particularly in rural areas, and this migration flow. And that makes life a little hard, because that leads to real population decline in many of these regions. So that's a natural thing. It becomes more difficult if young people are forced to leave while they want to stay. And still many people want to stay. I mean, it's not that all young people are leaving. No, there's people interested in being in their local area and build a life there. But sometimes, indeed, because of jobs or other things, they are forced to leave. Well, that would be a focus for a policy, I think. That should not be the case if people need to leave because of the necessity is there. Later in life, people do all sorts of things, and indeed return migration is one possible aspect. And we have seen around the COVID times that we thought everyone is moving back to the countryside. It's not the case. But some people do. And even if it's some people, then it may be beneficial to the region. And we are talking about small municipalities, as Jordi gives an example. Even a flow of maybe 20 or 30 people over the course of a couple of years can make a lot of difference to a small municipality. And it's not so much the numbers, it's the quality. And I will be talking with this afternoon about the sort of the quality of migration in terms of human capital in migration, which makes a difference as well. So that is something that really should have a look at. And return migration is one thing, but there are also other people who have never been there before and still want to move somewhere where they can sort of build a new life. We should not forget about them as well. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Leo. Pawel, let me turn to you. It's a bit full circle for you. You were at the very first event, and I know you're focusing on various projects, but give us your initial thoughts to set the scene in first.
Okay, first, Thank you very much for the invitation. Congratulations to the project and the outcomes, Becky, for presenting the dashboard. But dashboard I know for since the beginning, and I'm trying to use it and test it, and I believe it is a really interesting tool. But coming back to the question, I'm representing two organizations. One is Polish Academy of Sciences, Institute of Rural and Agriculture Development, which is a research center, and also European Rural Development Network, which is a network that is like almost 25 years old now. And it brings together the researchers from the Central Eastern Europe and the Southern as well, but it's like mostly Central Eastern Europe, studying the rural development. And of course we are implementing the project, but like discussing the what is behind the rural development. And also we try to work closely with the bottom-up approaches, with the multi-actor approaches, which is giving us also like the insight what's going on in the different types of rural areas across the Central Eastern Europe. And the question is absolutely hard to answer in a very simple way, because we are seeing the very different layers. The same as we study. When we think about rural development, we are not longer thinking about only rural attractiveness, the settlements, but we also we are thinking about the system, rural system, which is also like that's why we are trying to in our studies put the lenses on the development of a bioeconomy, of food systems, of cultural issues, because this all forms the quality of well-being on the rural areas, and the same importance have issues that are connected to the tangible issues, like as for example Leo mentioned, or Jordi, that the housing matters, but like the more and more and more there are intangible issues that are very important. So there are issues that are not like defining the well-being in a new way. This is not only the life satisfaction or momentary mood, but also like the different frameworks that are bring it together, like the perspective on this. So, for example, like the self-determination theory is giving this perspective, where we have those layer of a psychological functioning, connected to the autonomy, competences, like the relations. The second is like mental resources, which is like even the optimism, the resilience, and the social well-being, like trust, social cohesion, a sense of loneliness. And this is like something that we have to take also into consideration when we think about what is shaping the migration patterns. And of course, we have those like issues that are related to that can be tackled with the policy. But at the same time, the policy needs to be really like thinking broadly about the rural areas. So people are migrating. Then people are migrating from the rural areas, and a number of them won't come back to the rural areas, and the others will. And sometimes this is the matter of the life cycle. For example, if they are in a different life state where they have children, they are more attached to the environment that is helping them to raise this child, and it is proved that like the rural environment is more favorable for this. The very important issue that is also forming the wars behind the like migration patterns and issues that makes people come back to rural areas is like those intangible organization of the life at rural areas. I am an institutionalist, and I call it institutions, formal and informal institutions. The formal are the policy, so something that we are dealing here in this room, and the second is built on the norms on the social engagement, which is based on what is shaped by the policy, but inside the rural areas. So I guess my first insight I would like to bring is like we have to also count also at the policy level the perceptions, the feelings of the rural inhabitants, because this is something what is hard to catch, but very important when they do the final decisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pawel. Hanne, let me come back. I mean, you mentioned education as well, but there is well-being, as we've mentioned there, cultural initiatives, sort of green energy projects. All of these things are great and very, but a bit abstract. Can you talk about what sort of policies or specific policies and incentives are effective, are really proven to be effective in encouraging return?
Just have to do this. Well, you can. I would say it's very difficult to create something where there's not anything in advance. But in Denmark, we have experienced our cold Hawaii. In the northern of Denmark, where people have left long time ago, suddenly other people turned up, people who wanted to windsurf. And they actually found it so good that they started to say, "Well, we'll try to live here because here you can really do something." And they would like to take jobs also far away and then go back and forward. So they wanted to live there. And first, when they had settled those windsurfers, then suddenly other people who liked those. Just moved after them. So now a large population is living on the coast in the northern part of Denmark, who had come from Copenhagen or Aarhus and all the other big cities. There are living many doctors up there. Then they go for the greater hospital in the big cities in Jutland. So if there's something there in advance, something who is taking people there, you can do it. It's the same thing on Fanø, a little island living down in the south. Suddenly, it's very beautiful, really beautiful. And people just seem to be very fond of it. And it had come because there were so many houses there to use for the holiday. And then people started thinking, why don't live here? And then when the first had settled in, created somehow a decent group, then others came. And we see that many places in Denmark, actually. But one of the places who is most interesting is Svendborg and down the south of Fyn, because there's a bigger settling, because the other places where I've told, then people come and live there, perhaps when the children are small, when the children have to go further in their education or get teenagers and think that it's boring to live in Klitmøller, then the families move again. But in Svendborg, they don't. It's because it's bigger. There are more. There's better. There's schools also for the children, or half-adult children, and then they actually stay in Svendborg. So, if I should say that the thing you should do, that is support what's already there. You can try to invent it, and somehow if you have some politicians who are really stubborn, like of Bornholm, where one politician moved and said, this is a really beautiful island, I will do something for it. It took 20 years, but he succeeded. They dragged people who made art in especially clay, and then slowly they got some support and people who moved there. So stubborn politician, something that is already there, and the support what is already there. You can't invent anything on bare soil, but you can really do something to support where you can feel that here is people willing to do something.
Leo, let me come to you. We're talking a bit in terms of what we think will work. But what about data? What about by drawing on this sort of evidence-based, science-based planning? And how can data from living labs and research projects in particular inform these strategies for regional development, population retention, and so on?
Yeah, well, there is a lot of data, it has been said already, and we use some of it in our dashboard, and that helps. And it is also so that developments are very fast. We see that increasingly the level of detail is such that you can really see something at the local level. And that is, I think, a development that is highly necessary. We had some there. In the past, we had information at the national level, which is not very relevant for the region in the country. And then we moved to the bigger regions, and now we are working on the so-called NUTS 3 regions. In many cases, still too big, but we increasingly have local information. And I heard Sandra from the UCD talking about developments that you can really zoom in on the very local level. And that is, I think, where policy can meet research the easiest, because it's really about contextualizing your policies. I mean, as many of our policies in the dashboard, you have to adapt it to your own situation. And that means, okay, what does it mean for my local area? For instance, in rural regions which are declining, you still find villages, spots which are growing. So this sort of level of detail is really necessary, and that's, I think, the direction that we are moving in pretty fast. Almost everything, at least in a number of countries here in Europe, we have almost everything at the local level, at the individual level. Not every country, but increasingly I think it will happen. And then this very local context of data on not only the demography, but on regional development, on the various aspects of the social dimension, of the environmental dimension, of climate. In a couple of years from now, we will no longer, as researchers, have the excuse that there is no data. I think we are approaching a situation. There is data. Do something clever with it. That will be the big challenge. Yeah.
I mean, Jordi, let's build on that a little bit. I mean, obviously, we're talking about the data, and I'm sure when you're looking at sort of prioritizing policy areas, you have to draw on that. But also, how do those participatory processes in municipalities help with these policies and developing policies, and where does the data come into it, and where does that work?
I think it's very important that the different layers of government and different decision makers coming from these different territorial levels can cooperate in not only in getting and sharing the data, which is, I mean, we need to take decisions based on the reality. That means based on good quality data, but also in sharing their experiences, because I think the people that best know what their neighbors need and what are their aspirations, probably one of the best knowledge belongs to the local politicians and to the mayor. So we have to, according to our view, we have to involve them, not only when it comes to putting together those proposals, for instance, those 900 proposals that we find in the rural agenda of Catalonia, but also when implementing them, and when trying to supervise the level of progress in every policy area. That's why one of the important tools inside both the rural agenda and the law on the special status for rural municipalities in Catalonia is the involvement of different, of course, stakeholders, but also decision makers, from the lowest level up to the regional government level, in order to know from the experience and from the ground what's working and what's not working, or what should work better.
Pawel, I mean, the same sort of area, I want you to talk about what is the role of this evidence-based planning in addressing the challenges of depopulation, or challenges in general when we look at migration.
Because this is crucial. But as Jordi said, this is very important, like how we are mixing, how we are reading the data, and what are the sources for the data, because now we are struggling with the big transformation. This is like the transformation driven on different layers, not only this green transformation, but this is also a huge social transformation comes from first the globalization, which is about to end. I'm just joking that it's like a closing to the deglobalization, yeah. But the most important issues that it brought was like the access to the shared lifestyles, which is like the shaping the motivations, the ambitions of the citizens. At the same time, access to the modern technologies, which is also like the source of a new data of the people. So those novel data are already there in place, but they are used by the business mostly, by the marketing, and this is like also the source of the desire for the researchers. I'm also a researcher, so I see, for example, analyzing the food systems, what kind of data have those big marketing, like the big companies selling food. They know like almost everything about the consumers, which we could use those data also to shape the policies, because then we also would know more about, for example, what is driving the younger population in the decisions about whether to stay or leave the rural areas. So different kinds of data are important, and as Leo said, there are like more than this project working with the data, and for example, I will bring one example of a project called Granular, and this is working with developing the rural compass. One of the compasses, one of the approaches that are present in the European research policy sphere. And it is describing the rural functions, which is like the residential, productive, environmental, and recreational. And this is like important, but at the same time, it is really hard. And we found in this project it's really hard to integrate the information from like the novel sources, like from the cell phones, from the social media. And this all is very important, because the more we are in the times of access to the information, the more we see that narratives are gaining in importance. So like the story about the place, about the lifestyle, about answering the myth of building and answering the motivations. And this is also for the rural areas, when we see that that people coming back to the like certain place, they are assessing the tangible issues like the infrastructure, housing, but also they want to know about like what is the story about the living in that place. And this is like that touching something that we, especially economists, we are not that deep inside. So for example, the culture, the access to the entertainment, to access to the infrastructure that is like the entertainment-driven infrastructure. So this is extremely important also to catch this into the policy, and this is like always the hard from the policy perspective to go out from the, I would not say silos, but like from the perception of the space. So also in the premium EU we have the data that are describing these issues, but I guess the most important, like the most important issue that is blocking the flow of the information is like more wide interdisciplinary approach that is encompassing the researchers and the policymakers from different sectors. And we see that in our countries, especially in Central Eastern Europe, we see that the policy is still fragmented in the sectors, placed in the sectors. And I guess the hope is in research, because also this project.
Well,
but I'm observing, because the projects are the window open for the researchers from different disciplines to come together and think about what would be the right narrative. So this narrative is the aim of the policy. So what will be the right narrative for the areas? And then the only the one thing I would like to stress, because probably we did not mention that we will not fight, of course, for the bringing the people back to the rural areas everywhere. Yeah, so it's those smart shrinking. And the coping with issues of population decline, it would be also something that we can perceive more positive, not only as a negative trend, but as a positive, changing how is what is the setup, what is the institutional background of the life at the rural areas. For example, digital infrastructure will be more and more important in this matter. Thank you.
It's because now we're discussing people who are going back to settle there, but I actually also would like to discuss something about what about the home away from home. People are getting more wealthy in Europe, and many want a second house, and it's of course a possibility for rural areas, but it can also be dangerous. Well, in my country, it's mostly that when you don't stay there yourself, then you rent out for other people to go there on holiday. But we could have many empty houses. But at least if the houses are standing empty before, perhaps it was a good idea to see, is it possible that also rural areas could have advantage, that people want to go in the countryside in the weekends, on holidays, perhaps also sometimes if the internet can support them sit at home, work at home, if they have a job like that. Is there a possibility that we could see people who are actually more or less living two places, that one of them could be in the countryside, could be in the rural area? It's especially, of course, people who are not small children who are attending school. But I would like to hear also the comments on it. Is that a possibility? Of course, it's also dangerous. People who are living there in second house do not pay taxes there. Perhaps they support the local shops, or do they have it with them carried on from where they live? So, but I would like to hear some thoughts about it. Also, if it's actually a kind of tourism, you could say. Is that also a possibility that could support some of the rural areas? Not all. There are also rural areas who are, well, not attractive for tourists. But I'd like to hear it.
Yeah, the argument and discussion about second homeowners contributing to the local economy is certainly relevant. But at the same time, as you say, you don't want to necessarily, if you want, price young families out of the region because they drive prices up, which is another concern in certain areas. Jordi, you mentioned the importance of stakeholder engagement. Let's talk a little bit about what sort of methods local authorities or policymakers can use to engage residents in the design and implementation of those policies. And then, Hanne, I'm actually going to come back to you then after that to talk about how we communicate that from an EU level. So take us through the municipality side first, Jordi.
If we are speaking about the small municipalities where a couple of tens or hundreds of people live, the local authorities, local elected people should try to involve as much as possible their citizens and in principle, it should be easier, because I mean the human dimension of the rural communities should allow for it, and it's important to engage citizens in the design of policies and the design of the decisions that their elected people are going to take on their behalf. If I may add one question, one issue, building on what was said right now on the narratives, on the strength of narratives, the sense of belonging. Usually in the rural communities there is a strong sense of belonging. In the metropolitan area of Barcelona, 5 million people, we find the most dense square kilometers in Europe. And you will find there all the services, you will find there many economic opportunities, but for many people living in one of the most dense square kilometers in Europe, going abroad from the city, going to the rural areas, means also improving their quality of life. And we have, I mean, not everyone will be willing to move outside the city and maybe to lose access to some public services and so on. But there is this other dimension about being close to nature, being in a nice environment with a better quality of life. And here comes the argument of the narratives. Many mayors tell us that for them their place is the best place in the world, much better than the cities, much better than for instance our coastal communities where we have lots of different cities, one below another. But they need support, they need help, they need financial possibilities. They need to have the certainty that by developing their own narratives about their places, they can attract people wishing to improve their quality of life, and that's an asset, I guess, in most of the rural places across Europe. But it's not enough. The narrative is not enough. There has to be financial support and political will to help match the narrative with the expectations.
Thank you. I think you're absolutely right, and not for today, but there's probably a conversation to be had about greening urban areas. Hanne, let me talk to you about the communicating from an EU level and the challenges of taking some of those narratives, which may be very local experiences related to migration. How can we communicate that effectively in a way that resonates and in a way that perhaps generates the financial support and policies?
Well, I would say that this discussion have to go on in the Committee of the Regions, because they know their regions and the cities. So actually, I would say that the discussion should go further there, and I would say that they should form recommendations about how to do it. It will be different, and we can see the dashboard here. Actually, a thing like that could be enlarged and then have other the topics that we're discussing now going on, or saying here is recommendations from the core of the different countries. What do we do, on what do we focus? But perhaps it's right that we could focus on the consumer behavior and see if people are consuming, so to say, where they want to live. Actually, I experience it a little different. It's not supported with what people else do have in a consumer and as consumers. It's It's something else and something deeper. You could say that young people have always moved away from home to see something else, to get experience. That's not actually what's new. What is new is they don't come back. They don't come back to their families as they used to do in the older times. So that's what we're dealing with. And I think that it's right. There's so many different approaches you could do, and there's very, very big difference in the examples I've given for Denmark and what would be useful. For example, in France, because it's a completely different rural areas that you have in France than that you have in Denmark. Or even if you have what I do not know nothing about is about mountains. How do you get people to stay in the mountains if they have been away for education? But I think that we should collect all the good examples, and perhaps even make a dashboard, or even enlarge the one for Nord Regio, and that will be useful.
Right. Maybe to add to the role of the higher governments in supporting local governments, your question of the European level, but it might also apply to the national level. What we have in the dashboard are many policies that might sort of steer imagination of how to apply something in your own field, but sometimes legal obstacles are there. Anti-speculation or anti-competition sort of rules are there. In my country, for instance, regions that wanted to sort of retain health facilities were sort of that were prevented of doing that because that sort of was not according to EU rules. You should have some experimentation possibilities in specific regions to try new things. And maybe that doesn't follow the official laws of the country, but you could have sort of define some sort of an area where you could try out something new, and if it works, it might sort of provoke stimulate new legislation.
Well, before we come, I have a few more questions that I have ready, but I want to see if there's any questions from the floor from any of our panellists on this topic, or any thoughts that anyone wants to develop in relation to some things you've heard saying here. Okay, we'll go just straight here and then further back.
Oh, thank you. I mean, thank you very much, all the panel discussants. I have a question, maybe two questions to Mr. Solé Ferrando. You mentioned also sense of belonging and the narratives. I'm curious also, you also rightly highlighted the hard factors like jobs, housing, economy, but maybe local identity and local language. Does it also play a role, or how to, let's say, motivate people to come back, or maybe to keep those ties, more mobility, visiting the region in summer as a family, bringing more opportunities, contributing to the social and economic life? But I'm also thinking, not just in Catalonia, but in Spain, the rural areas are successful to attract, but also retain international migration, right? Like people from not just EU, but also North Africa and Latin America. We see second generation, third generation. So they are not moving to urban centers, but they stay there, and then they are part of the community. So what do you think, despite all the shortcomings that you already described, maybe some recipes for this success, or what is working or different than the other European regions? Is it just about the narrative?
Okay, let's give Jordi a chance to answer here. Okay.
Okay, thank you for your questions. How much time do I have? No, I'll be very, very brief. I'll start with your second question. When it comes to international migrants, it's not the narrative and bringing them to the rural areas. It's economic opportunities. And you are right, there are some good examples of some spots, some places in a context where there is the population problem, that they manage still to attract population, usually migrants from other continents. And this is because these places, these municipalities, manage to diversify their economy. They manage to develop a strong, for instance, agri-food industries. We have some examples in Catalonia where some municipalities manage to develop such industries. Also, opportunities related with energy, renewable energy, bioeconomy. But I would say, first of all, related to agro-industry. That brings lots of migrants to not only to work temporary. Some of them are temporary, but some of them stay and settle in the place. And we have some good examples about this happening in a rural context in Catalonia. And on your first question on identity, I would say this is very much related to places developing their own narrative. Come to visit us or come to stay with us because we have our own, let's say, our very local identity related to our environment. What do we offer in terms of, for instance, gastronomy? It is very much related to how to develop a tourist offer, which is not the usual one. No, for instance, in our case, not the sun and beaches tourism, but also another kind of tourism more related to the nature, to the local history, to the heritage, the architectural, historical heritage, and that's also a way to make places attractive. Maybe in the first instance for tourists, but why not potentially for people that they may come for the first time as tourists, but maybe they like the place and they start thinking about, oh, why don't at some point settling here? No?
Hanne, you want a brief comment?
Yes, I would say that on a attractive background, the Danes have experienced that Ukrainian have come to Denmark, and many of them have settled in the rural areas, perhaps because they had new people who were there in advance to work there, but the whole villages have been held up because Ukrainians have settled there. I would say it was more about the experiments in how you do it in rural areas. So I would say, don't break the law. There's enough people in this world who breaks the law, international rights. So I would say you have to do that. But I would say too, experience. We try in my country, or at least I do, also to see how can we get the hospital out to the citizens, that they don't have to drive for the hospital who is far away or be flown or something. Perhaps we could also develop something, cars with special equipment who could drive the expertise out to where the citizens are living. And I think that perhaps we should have this thought more. Perhaps we could drive some of the public goods to the people and not experience that they always travel hundreds of kilometers for the next big city.
I think we're going to let Leo maybe make a comment possibly related to regulatory sandboxes rather than breaking the law.
No, I'm a very obedient citizen, so I would never say something like that. But no, one small remark regarding the role of international migration, as some already pointed out. From our research, comes out something very interesting. All demographic components for rural areas are negative. Natural change is negative. Internal migration from the countryside to the cities is negative. The only positive element, on average, in almost all countries, is international migration. And that is in many forms. It is tourism or people moving to leisure areas. Asylum will be a role. Labor in agriculture will be a role. So in many countries it will be different. But it's very significant that on average it is positive. And also significant that if you look at sort of, the anti-migration sentiment, that is also strongest in the very same regions. So something maybe to ponder about as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to let Jordi have a quick answer. And of course, today we're more focused, on migration in Europe rather than forced migration, because that brings a whole different set of questions with it. But Jordi, you can have a quick comment.
Yeah, no, it's because I forgot to reply on your question on language for migrants coming to stay. Language is not a problem at all. Even in those places, like in Catalonia, where we have our own language, in many rural communities, the main language would be Catalan. But if migrants find opportunities, economic opportunities, and, very important, they feel welcome in the community, they will adapt. They will speak Catalan, or they will speak, maybe not the first generation, but the second generation. For sure, they will quickly adapt, and that's our experience. Language, it's not a problem as long as the receiving community welcomes. I mean, in a normal way. You don't have to organize any parties, but in the day-to-day life of migrants, they can feel, involved and welcome.
And of course, we've got wonderful digital translation tools which can help us all with that. I'm going to I see two questions here. I'm going to take them both together, but keep them succinct so that we have a chance to try and get through both of them.
Yes, thank you. On the topic of return migration, what makes people come back? But the question I would have also is what makes them want to continue staying and remaining? And I remember, I think, a workshop that you organized back in September on this, because my question would be, is your project looking at, for example, what public authorities can do in terms of developing the enabling conditions for these return migrants to actually stay? We know that these migrants possibly speak several languages. They come with a certain experience. They come maybe also with expectations, of course. They have maybe, they come with something on their shoulders. And I think that, I'm going to simplify, one of the conclusions of your workshop back in September was that I think in Poland and in Turkey.
Okay. I'm going to get you to come very quickly to the point. Okay, and we'll take the other question next to you, but please keep it succinct.
Yes, thank you. I will be quite brief. Coming back to the discussion of tourism as an attractiveness factor for small municipalities, etc., I would like to maybe get more examples from the panelists of how tourism has been incorporated into, population decline policies. And then I just would like to hear as well, because of course we can see a potential, boom in the local economy, creation of jobs, but there's also a possible rise in housing prices due to temporary accommodation. Thank you.
Thank you. Leo, do you want to tackle that first question in regards outcomes of the project?
Well, if you talk about return migration, you have to see it in a life course perspective. It's at some certain stage you leave, and at another stage you return. And it depends on, I think, what you do in between, whether the choice to return is beneficial to you or not. And if you look at sort of current developments in lifestyles, in the economy, and in norms and values, you would look at new developments in remote working, in sharing, not putting just economy first in your life, but having a more balanced life. That sort of things might be things to market out as a region to attract people to come back. I'm not sure if it will be possible to retain people. As I said before, young people leave the region, and there is a fact of life in a sense. I mean, except for forced leavers, you have to accept that, and it's sort of make it more attractive for some of them to return later in life. That's, I think, the big issue. Yeah.
Hanne, I think you said you can speak on education, on tourism, Mother, and then Pawel, I'm going to give you a chance for a wrap-up.
I'll do it very short, the time to see. But I would say tourism, if that should be a success, then you have to be very curious about what is attracting people here. If it's nature, then you have to be very, very strict about taking care of the nature and let people build another house for not only taking over old houses, but perhaps also build new houses, but be very, very strict on how they are. But suddenly your beautiful beach is totally destroyed by a 12-meter-high hotel. That's not how to do it. If you want to have also tourism who is not may ruin the country. So very strict rules about how you can buy and how you can develop the area for tourism, and of course you should allow people also to shop and to go on cafes and so on, but also in a really strict area. If you want to support the nature, perhaps you should tear some of the houses down in the rural area and say this is actually a countryside, a nature where we try to develop something else. Well, I think if you start there, it will go well.
Pawel, I did say I would give you the final word, because our panellists are going to be around all day and there will be plenty of opportunities for discussion during networking, but I'm conscious of lunch break coming up. So, Pawel, just final thought, maybe looking at what are the emerging trends, what could influence retention, return migration. Sum it up for us to wrap up our panel.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. I was mentioning about those frameworks that are shaping the perception of well-being, because this is all about the people, actually. Yeah, so like how we are cope with the ambitions and aspirations of the people, and this is where we talk about thinking about the rural areas and rural attractiveness. And research shows that those frameworks that were associated with more mental resources and social well-being, so those which are more based on the relations, trust, and so on, they are more strong among the people living in the rural areas. And because we are all diverse, so we can imagine that people seeking for the first the tourism offer, and also looking at the rural areas as a place of where they would like to live, they are closer to those aspects. So the local policy and the regional policy, because this is the more and more important, the collaboration between the regional and the local authorities is important, and they are shaping they're creating the enabling environment, because as you mentioned that people coming from abroad, for example, bringing the new skills, they already know what they were going to be doing in the rural areas. They just want to have the settlement that is reflecting what they need. So answering the needs is the investigating what is the people let's say ambition or the approach. So the most important from the policy perspective is to have a lot of information from about how is the economic life organized in the rural areas, but also to know how is the aspirations, what it to shape those narrative. But the most important is also to look at very widely on the transformation that we are facing. As I mentioned at the beginning, like the rural areas is not like the stable and perception of rural areas is not as we know till now. It's like there's new opportunities coming from the transformation, which is, for example, the new types of tourism of experience, like the bioeconomy, which is giving the new jobs, and like the building the modern farming. So these all issues are forming the perception of rural areas, and this is the most important for the people. They would like to come back or settle in there.
Thank you. And I know there's an awful lot to be said, and we only have one day, but we are going to break now for a 1-hour lunch break. And